Welcome back to Career Talk. I'm your host, Matt Lowney, and our next guest today is Bill Karlson. He's with the Military Transition Institute. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, Bill, tell me a little bit about the Military Transition Institute. What is that?
It's founded recently because I believe there's a significant need to help our troops returning from both Iraq, Afghanistan, and those that have been in the service for an extended period of time that are retiring to get basically base camp for the civilian world, because they really are getting shot when they come out.
They come out. So let's ask this. Why is helping folks who are transitioning from the military, why is that your passion? Why is that interesting to you?
Well, I guess my father was Navy. I'd signed up for the Army during Vietnam, and it ended before anything actually happened, our OTC programs. Both grandfathers were in the Army. I just have a history of wanting to be of service to our military. Great.
Well, what issues do people who are transitioning from the military into civilian workforce, what are some of the key issues they face?
There's several. The two that, in terms of dividing them by groups, you have active deployed that are coming back that had jobs prior to that. The jobs have either been filled by somebody else, or they didn't like what they were doing before they went in the service. Now they come back and they want to try a brand new opportunity. Or they've been in the service for an extended period, 20, 25, 30 years, and they really aren't sure how to transition out. And in both groups, you look at their resumes and you have to smile saying, is this in English? And they go, yes. I said, but you don't understand, a civilian won't have any idea what you said here.
Is that, I guess that's always where I'm curious, because I talk to military, folks departing the military all the time, and that's one of the things I was like, I don't know what this is. So do you kind of have to help them translate?
In a couple of different things. They're used to not really having a lot of choices, so that they're given the best they can. They do a great job. I say, okay, what would you love to do if you're given the choice, and what would you have to be able to do to be significant in that assignment for your employer? Fine. I can't find that anywhere on this resume.
And nobody's going to infer that. I think that's the other end of that.
That's right.
What do you find that a lot of the skills they learn in the military are really that translatable to civilian workforce, or are they learning skills that aren't really that helpful?
One of the reasons I founded the Military Transition Institute was I think we have a massive loss of significant leadership. It's my experience that we don't have better leaders than we have in the service. If you don't perform literally under fire, you don't perform. So you take a look at what they've been taught to do and how they can perform in stressful situations. All we have to do is teach them how does that match the civilian sector. So I think many of the skills are transferable.
And I guess the key is then to learn how to say, you know, I was a leader in this battalion or this and that and the other, and what does that mean to me as an employer?
I take it from a different perspective. I don't think the employers really care what somebody wants, what they think that was important. They've got a problem they're trying to solve. No one's paying them to interview anybody we're talking to it. And so the challenge is to teach our candidates and people looking for the jobs, what can I really ask an employer quickly at the beginning of an interview that allows me to find out what problem are they trying to solve?
Well, let's kind of talk about it, because I know you work with both folks who are military and then just out there looking for a job. How do you help them find a job? With the interview process maybe, or how you help prepare them? You'd mentioned just a second ago looking at the interview as problem solving, which is, I think, outside of most folks' comfort zone.
It probably is, but it also reduces most of the stress. When I was a headhunter for about 12 years, and I prepared my candidates and said, look, if you're tossed the question, tell me about yourself, and assume it is going to be asked of you at some point. Please do not respond with what you think they want to hear, or if you're a recent graduate, your educational background, both of which are going to negate the opportunity for you.
And I'll say from my perspective, what I hear all the time is this kind of a bunch of extraneous stuff about your family and your kids and soccer practice, and at some point I just, as a recruiter, I'm like, kind of, let's bring this back to something relative. So you think most candidates are a little uncomfortable with kind of that you ask me question, I ask you question back? Yeah,
it's like a beauty pageant from hell, I think. That they're waiting there, one of number of 50, to hope they get picked and they got their hair right, and they're just frozen. And I say, first of all, you don't want to go work for a place where you don't fit. So why don't you start to ask the interviewer questions you'd like to have answered that relate to trying to solve their problem.
What questions? You just mentioned one. Tell me about yourself, and you say, well, what's your problem? What are other kind of comfortable questions to ask during an interview?
Well, the three that tend to shut people down: tell me about yourself, how much money do you need, and the question that they have on the way out, I wonder if I'm going to be invited back for another interview. Are the ones that I take probably most of my time preparing candidates for.
We talked a little bit about the tell me about yourself. The second one in line there was the salary negotiation piece, which I know a lot of people get uncomfortable with. How do I handle it? Interviewer asks me, what are you looking to make?
And that's okay, let's walk through this. So you're a headhunter, I'm a candidate. Excuse me. So what kind of money I want to make? Are you prepared to make me an offer?
At this point, we probably wouldn't be.
What else do you need to know before you can make me an offer?
I would want to ask you all these other questions along the way. So you want to, again, step out of this role playing. You want to make sure that we are talking about, we want to have everything laid on the table before we can actually talk about money. Is that the goal?
Yeah, it's the goal, but I also know some truths. As a person sitting that's going to be hired, if I give you a number, I'm going to lose. It's not going to hit exactly what you're thinking I should be paid. It's probably going to be too high, maybe too low. And the fact is, it doesn't matter because you already know what you're willing to pay me before I ever showed up.
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit about the last piece when we walk out the interview asking for what the next step is. You're watching Career Talk, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Career Talk. I'm your host, Matt Lowney, and we continue our conversation with Bill Karlson. He is with the Military Transition Institute and otherwise just a guy that knows a lot about career advice. And before the break, we talked about kind of your 3 keys to preparing for an interview. Tell me about yourself, the salary negotiation piece. But then the last part is kind of, as I'm leaving, and I as the interviewer asked, do you have any more questions? What do I do with that as a candidate?
That is a very direct response from the employer saying, please leave.
Really?
Yes, they're done. If they say, do you have any further questions, they need to get on with this. They're not being paid to interview or spend time with you. I counsel people, this is not the time to pull out of that portfolio 55 questions you got off the internet because you have to ask some. I think that you need to thank them for their time, leave, and I teach people what I call the Carlson-Colombo close. You might remember Peter Falk and the cigar and all that. Well, it's kind of perceived as an idiot by the killer, and then when he leaves, he nails them. That's based on how he chooses to do it. As you're leaving an interview, you thank them for the time, you're starting to get your stuff together, you stop at the door for a moment, and you turn around and look them straight in the eye and say, well, Matt, I got one more thing to ask you. Do you think I'm qualified for this assignment with your organization? A couple of things why that works. First, you give it a pause, so their mind's on to the 5 emails they just got, their boss walked by twice. And the fact is their body language will tell you the truth, yes, no, or we've got to see some more people. Don't go home without an answer. No's fine. At least know where you stood before you go out the door. So they can respond with, yes, you are, fine, what's my next step? No, you're not, please help me. Was there something I did in the interview that I might avoid the next time because I really want to do well here? Or we have some more people to see. As you're going out, the response is, you know what, unlike most of the candidates you're going to see, I really want this job. Can I call you Tuesday around 4 next week to see where I stand? So
don't be afraid to ask for a time and when you're going to follow up.
That's how the world runs.
Gotcha. So don't be afraid. I mean, I think a lot of people miss out on the opportunity. This is a sales process. The interview process is a sales process, and they forget to ask for the business at the end of this whole thing. So I think that's a great way to go about it.
Huge piece that most folks miss. The employer is under greater stress than the person that's being interviewed. They've got to fill this job. They're not being paid to do it. They're getting stressed out. There's a problem coming that's already way into this thing. They're hoping you're the right person.
So you just need to kind of give them the reason that you're the best person.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. So I think what would be an interesting conversation with you is to talk a little bit of kind of like this, the candidate and the employee and the candidate, or employer and the candidate chasm here, if you will. The employer wants to find out about you, and the candidate wants to just kind of talk about themselves, and somewhere in between they really miss connecting. Is that what you find?
They go in as if it's a sales call. When I hear people say, you've got to sell yourself, I just flinch. I say, no. Go in as a consulting call. Ask the kinds of questions. Can I help you with your problem or not? And it drops the stress out because now, and I believe in thorough preparation, you refer back to your portfolio. So your biggest problem is, I have a couple of examples, may I refer to those, and then you quote about 30 seconds, is that going to help you or not?
So I know a lot of the times you'll interview with a company and they've got this form that says, I'm going to ask this question, this question, this question. And it's kind of the comfort zone for the interviewer. I think a lot of times you'd mentioned, you know, they're stressed out and they probably don't do this a whole lot as it is. How do you make them at ease to get away from that?
That's a very good point. If you're interviewing for a governmental assignment or academic assignment, you go right down the list with them and you respond precisely the way they tell you. If you're working with a headhunter, as you know professionally, you respond to their questions precisely the way they give them to you. My perspective is, if they ask about salary, you give them a number, the lowest number you can, because the truth is they're going to find you later in the database, and the lower your salary requirements, the more opportunities you're going to be presented to.
Interesting. I never thought about that approach, but I guess that's a good way to go about it. So let's say we're not one of those, you know, academic or military, just a private employer that's looking to hire somebody. They may only hire somebody once every 6 months or a year. I'm guessing they're going to be more comfortable with this conversation, be more conversational versus interviewer or interviewee.
Yeah, the ones that are asking typically down the list have been sued before.
Yeah.
There's a very good reason they're going down that list. It's because of discriminatory practice, and they don't want to get out of bounds.
Yeah.
If the questions are written from a perspective of behavioral, meaning how would you handle this situation, it's going to be great. If they're very specific yes, no's, they're uncomfortable with it too because they're not getting the answers they need. And at some point you can gently say, do you believe at this point I'm the kind of person you're going to need to continue the questions with?
Sure.
Allow them off the hook.
So it's to kind of allow them to be comfortable with you.
Yes.
A good part of the time. So are there any other kind of common mistakes that when you're working with candidates and counseling them that they make or that they're uncomfortable with during the process?
Yeah, they try to sell themselves. That tell me about yourself. Invariably, they've read a book or they've gotten some training that says you've got to have 3 elevator speech points you're going to make in the next 70 seconds. And my perspective is always, that's fine, I'm glad you're prepared. However, how do you know those are what they need?
Well, let's ask this. You hear all this advice. You go online, you see all these books. You can go to a bookstore, and there's shelf after shelf, career advice and resume writing. How do you filter through all of that stuff to what's relevant to me and the position I'm interviewing for?
If it seems to you to be irrelevant, it is. But when I teach people, I say, look, I'm going to give you a lot of points to work from. Choose the one that resonate with your inner being and your heart, saying, that's true for me. Let the rest go. If you go in trying to fake it, trying to have controlled answers to tough questions, you're going to sound just like that. You're not authentic, they won't trust you, and they will not hire you.
So any quick points before we end the segment? Quick
one for senior officers exiting the military. Please do not sit down in front of an employer and say, I'm retired from the Air Force, and of course you knew what I made in the service.
Oh. Because a lot of times they don't.
They have no clue, and everybody in the service knows what everybody else makes.
Yeah.
And they just assume that civilian markets, first understand, second take the time to research it, and third care, all of which are untrue, because military tends to be underpaid relative to the civilian market based on the benefits they have.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for coming on. We'll definitely have you on in the near future. You've been watching Career Talk. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.